Outputting our coverage. It's what we do. That's all we do. Every Thursday at 5:30. College football. Mountain West Conference. Doesn't matter. SEC is all that matters. Nick Saban is crazy. Yeah. And that's all. Let's start the show.
All right. Here we are. Outputting our coverage once again, as we do every week, every day of our lives. We're back for another rip-roaring week of college football. And let's just get right into it. We got a lot to talk about this week. Let's go ahead and get into our favorite starting segment of the show, good call, bad call. David, let's get the negatives out of the way first this week. Let's start with your bad call.
Okay, my bad call. We had a lot of bad calls, by the way, so no judging out there. I think our highest pick'em was 6-4, so not a whole lot of good calls going on. My bad call was definitely Virginia beating Georgia Tech. I know that was a pretty popular pick this week. I really thought, they'd come out ready. I like their coach. I like the direction they're heading in, but did not work out well. Georgia Tech beats Virginia 56-20, so not even close.
It just goes to show that the ACC is basically bizarro land. Logic and normal rules do not apply there.
Exactly. When Virginia Tech gets beat by Pittsburgh, who we were making fun of in week number 1 because they got beat by the Penguins of Youngstown State, you just have no order in your league.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the SEC has any teams like that in our league. Arkansas is a powerhouse this year.
Of course.
You know how those things go. Anyways, my bad call is Michigan State, a team whose defense I have had a love affair with since the beginning of the season.
It's been rather uncomfortable over here.
It really has. My wife is starting to get worried, but the defense really was not so bad. I mean, they only allowed 20 points to Notre Dame. However, offense, atrocious. 3 points against the Notre Dame defense that is better, but still not that great. That's just very disappointing. And also, compounding this is the fact that by losing to Notre Dame, they're just allowing this Notre Dame ridiculosity to continue for yet another week.
Which I believe everybody except for 2% of people in America just want to end. Please, right. God, stop talking about Notre Dame.
I heard people at work saying that they were very excited this week because, number one, Boise State had already lost, and number two, USC had already lost. So those were two teams that they hated out of the way. Now, if Notre Dame could just lose, it would be perfect.
Perfect world.
We'll see. We'll probably talk about Notre Dame a little bit later on in this show, if I had to guess. But before we do that, go ahead. What's a good call that you had?
My good call was sticking with my gut and going with the Gators. I didn't really trust what I had seen out of Tennessee yet and thought Florida was on the rise. I didn't think they'd win by quite as much as they did, but the Gators look good. They won 37-20, and they're showing that they're a team of second-half adjustments. So,
yeah, I was very impressed with Jeff Driscoll in this game.
Right.
I feel like he really grew up in a hostile atmosphere up there against Tennessee. The question I have is, where does Tennessee go from here? We talked about last week whether this was a make-or-break game for these teams, whether or not it was going to define their season. Does Tennessee still have something to play for at this point, or is that it?
I think they do. They've still got a couple key matchups coming up, and they also have some big play opportunities. And when you have big play makers, you're always going to be in every game because you're just a pass or two behind. So Tennessee's going to scare a couple people, but I don't know. We both thought they'd be mediocre coming into the season. I think they're heading on that path.
Okay, let me ask you another question. At this point, you have to pick who you think will win the SEC East. Who are you going with right now?
I'm sticking with South Carolina. I picked them at the beginning of the year. They haven't looked great, but great teams look great at the end of the season, not at the beginning.
Is Florida challenging for that, do you think?
They can, but they're going to have to contend with a Georgia team who has a really easy schedule and is returning 4 defensive starters. So I think the East is going to be a lot more competitive than it has been in the last couple of years, and should be pretty interesting to watch going down the stretch.
Okay, well, for my good call this week, once again, I did not have a whole lot to choose from, so I'm almost taking a cop-out here, but I'm going to say Auburn was a good call for me. I did manage to predict that the game was going to be pretty close last week. I never said that it would be an impressive victory or a win by a large margin. I think I predicted that it would be like 4 points, so I hit that pretty much spot on.
You did. Now let me get a little more in depth with this. Did you go to the game?
I did. I was there.
So
yes.
Describe to all of us, because I was not there. You're up 28-14. That's actually when I first got to watch the game. I didn't get to watch it until it was 28-14. As ULM is starting to march down the field, and after they score that first touchdown, what's the feeling like?
The feeling is anger. Lots of people throwing things down on the bleachers. Lots of words that probably shouldn't be said around some of the kids that were sitting around. Really just frustration. It's almost kind of like we knew it was coming. We'll get a little bit more into this on the other side as we talk about some of this, but it's almost like it's typical Auburn football against a team that would not be typical against.
Right.
That's kind of what it boils down to. But on that note, we'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll talk about Alabama and Auburn's games from this past weekend, talk about the SEC matchups coming forward. So stick around, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We'll see you on the other side.
It's time for SEC preview. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, 12 can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong. And Missouri and Texas A&M as well. Yeah, SEC preview. Here we go.
Okay, here we are. We are back, ready to review the SEC. I was searching for the right word there. That's not very good. But we were talking about Auburn a little bit before this. Was a generally frustrating atmosphere there watching the game. Just overall, I felt like Auburn played better offensively and defensively on both sides against, admittedly, a little bit lesser competition. But the thing that still worries me is basically one mistake. And in this case, I will say Mike Blakely's fumble right near the goal line on the opening drive of the second half. One mistake and everything just comes unraveled. That's been a theme for Auburn this year. Up 28-14, multiple opportunities to put that game away. And instead of doing that, it just goes completely the other way. And that, to me, is very worrisome.
There are some scary words when it comes to a college football team, and I believe they describe Auburn pretty well right now, and that's mentally weak.
Yes.
And that's a really scary place to be in because you don't have any confidence. You make a lot of boneheaded decisions. You make mistakes. That's a really easy way to lose games.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think Louisiana Monroe has some pretty decent players. Colton Browning, I think a guy that will at least be a decent backup in the NFL. They did some good things, but Auburn has much better players overall than Louisiana Monroe. Like I said, they have multiple chances to put that game away. They were able to move the ball very well, at least with the running game. It's just little mistakes that keep adding up, and I think you've mentioned that before, but at some point those mistakes have got to go away.
That's right, if you plan to win.
Yeah, and that has not happened to this point. Let's swing the other direction. Let's talk about Alabama's win over Arkansas. In a game like this, there's not a whole lot you could say other than they did pretty much whatever they wanted to.
They did. It was over early. They got a lot of players in, and that was about all she wrote.
Physical domination, I guess, are two words you could use. Alabama able to spread the ball around to a lot of different folks. I think I saw that maybe 4 or 5 different running backs getting significant carries, get a lot of experience in an SEC game. That's a good thing to get. It's not something you usually are able to do.
It isn't, and Alabama's known for their stable. But I mentioned it at the beginning of the year, and a lot of people disagreed with me. But let's take a look now that we're 3 games in. I thought at the beginning of the year, and I think now, that their offensive coordinator has made a big difference in the way that offense looks.
Yeah, I can see that. I think things are a little bit more balanced now. I would say A.J. McCarron, before last week's game, I said this would be a test for A.J. McCarron. I don't know how much that was true, but if it was a test, I think he passed. He was, serviceable, didn't make any mistakes, allowed what was working to work.
Efficient.
So, yeah, he's efficient. I don't know. It still remains to be seen whether you can get much more out of him than that. They still haven't really faced anybody that can stop the running game, so... And I don't know that they will, maybe until LSU.
LSU
That's
is probably the only competition.
Probably the first test you're going to see. But, probably the biggest challenge for Alabama at this point is, staying sharp and staying focused.
Right.
You don't want to have that have a letdown where you think you're too big for your britches or one of those types of things. But in my opinion, until they play LSU, it's going to be pretty easy sledding for them.
It's easy pickings, and this year, which is different than some of the other years, Alabama typically does have that letdown game. A lot of people thought Western Kentucky was the letdown game, but they won 35-0. But I think they've done a really good job at staying sharp, staying focused so far. I really thought Arkansas would be the letdown game. I thought it'd be closer than what it was, but hats off to Alabama. They look pretty good.
Yeah, we'll talk about Arkansas's issues a little bit later on in the show. Obviously, some of those contributing to the scoring in this game as well, but overall, Alabama looked pretty solid. We're not really going to spend any time talking about their game versus Florida Atlantic this week, although you did have one thing you wanted to mention.
Right. Florida Atlantic defensive end Corey Henry called out Alabama this week. He said that they're not who everybody in the nation thinks they are, that they can be beat, which is a true statement. And then he goes on to say that he actually thinks that Florida Atlantic has the advantage because they have speed. So that's a pretty awful statement.
I think an Alabama player is probably going to find him on the field and make sure he remembers he said that. That would be my guess.
I think so. And at least it wasn't a running back who said that.
Yes.
Or a quarterback who Alabama's notorious for knocking out of games. But that's just not smart.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with his statement there. Sure, Alabama can be beat, but not by Florida Atlantic.
That's correct.
So we'll move ahead. There is one game happening in the state this weekend that is of significant magnitude. The LSU Corn Dogs coming to Auburn. Before we get into reality, let me give a couple of reasons why Auburn might be able to win this game. So if you're an Auburn fan, you can listen to these and then turn off your speakers for like the next 3 or 4 minutes and then just move on. So let me do this first.
You're pretty merciful.
Yes, let me do this first. Okay, number one, LSU is a different type of offense. Traditional, little bit slower pace than the 3 teams that Auburn has faced up to this point. So that could theoretically help Auburn, giving them some more time to get set up on defense, allows them to bring in a third linebacker, maybe take some pressure off the secondary. So there's one thing. Also, LSU is not really tested yet. They've played 3 cupcake games at home. They haven't been on the road yet. We haven't really seen what Zach Mettenberger could do. That's all I could come up with.
Kudos to you.
Yes.
For coming up with all that. I just think this is a part, by the way, where Auburn fans need to turn their speakers off for a couple minutes.
Yes. We will come knock on your door when it's okay to turn them back on.
Yeah. This is going to be ugly. I think this gets out of hand pretty quickly, and I think a lot of Auburn fans are going to be really upset once this one gets out of hand. LSU does run the ball a lot, so that has the potential to keep the score down a little bit. But I'm thinking, 35-7. It's going to be pretty bad.
Yeah, Alfred Blue, LSU's leading rusher up to this point, will not be playing this weekend. But they are getting Spencer Ware back. He had been out for a week or so. And then in addition to that, they have Michael Ford and Kenny Hilliard, LSU. Definitely another one of those teams that just has a stable of guys that they can throw at you in different situations. They held Washington, pretty much the only semi-legitimate team they've played so far, to a minuscule amount of rushing yards.
Right, and nobody's arguing about their defense. Their offense is kind of plain because of their defense.
Right. And to be honest, everything for Auburn hinges on the rushing game. If Auburn can get that going, takes pressure off of Kyle Frazier, makes life easier for the defense, and the truth of the matter is that's probably just not going to happen in this game.
The speed of LSU can keep up on the edge with Auburn's running attack.
Auburn's going to have a lot of trouble establishing that rushing game. As we mentioned, Zach Mettenberger hasn't really been tested yet, but so far he's been efficient, if not spectacular. So, I don't know. What's your key to the game? Obviously, mine is the rushing game, but what do you see? What could Auburn possibly do to win this game?
If they cut out the mistakes and they can make a couple big plays in the passing game, LSU is going to make them pass. If Frazier can kind of screw his head on right, he showed that he can make the throws downfield. If he can be accurate and make a couple big plays early, they're going to need that momentum early, get the crowd into it. That's the only way.
Yeah, I agree. You gave your prediction already, 35-7 LSU. I'm pretty much in the same ballpark, 31-10. Honestly, I'd be real happy to